Korean Shamanism story of Cho Sung-je. Love and War of Spirits, conveyed by 백강궁 풍백. Hotungud. Hotungud is a ceremony that should be done before becoming a shaman, which distinguishes if the right spirit have came or the evil spirit have. If the right spirit came, the one should live his or her life as a shaman. However, if an evil spirit comes, they should ease the ghost's deep-rooted grudge and send it back to a good place. The conflict created in one's lifetime is maintained even after death. If one dies without resolving the conflict, he or she becomes a ghost, and the resentment returns to the descendants as a pain. So Korean people have done haewonggut to remove the resentment of the dead. Late night, a woman and a man who had been sick and whose life had been tough came to Pungbek's 백강궁, located in Palgong Mountain. Pungbek have started the Hotungud. The goal of today's good is to find out which ghosts have came in and tormented two people. The woman and the man is shaking the flower to be possessed by the spirit. In shamanism, the flower represents eternal life, beauty, and the god's way, so shamans use flowers to meet gods or ghosts. The usual way of how shamans meet the god is through possession or ecstasy. The shamans of Korea usually use the way of possession, the god entering the human body. In contrast, the shamans of Mongolia or Siberia use the way of ecstasy, separating their own spirit from their body to meet the ghost. As Pungbek plays the ching, one of Korean traditional instruments, and utters an incantation, the woman suddenly shakes the flower and starts to talk. In other words, the possession have been done, which means the woman have been possessed by a spirit. The spirit of the dead father came into the body of the woman.
아버지 맞죠?
내가 아버지인데.
예.
내가 아버지인데. 내가 우리 많구나.
예.
Pungbek asked the woman if she's the father.
내가 왔는데 와서 자꾸
큰 딸도 그 하고 큰 딸도 식하고 되잖아.
다 필요 없고 다 필요 없고.
예.
아버지 너가 놀래가 어쨌든 우리 집을 살려주라.
예.
어떻게 우리 집을 우리
왜 살렸어요? 돈이 새 살렸지.
아버지가 잘못한 거 너무 우리가 어쨌든 이런 생각 해야지. 아이고 머리가 아파 죽겠대. 그래 네가 어떻게 네가 알았대 하고 많이 해야 된다 많이.
예.
The woman says she's the father and cries, complaining about having a headache. Pungbek notices that the woman has been possessed by the spirit of the father and requests to remove the karma of his previous life.
아유 다 닦으세요. 예. 다 닦으세요. 다 닦으세요. 예. 아버지는 혼자 왔어요. 해탈 다 해드려 오늘 나 풀어드리려 하잖아요.
아유 고맙다.
예.
고맙다고. 아이고 내가 뒀다.
너무 좋아하고 아까부터 막아 있더라니까.
아이고.
Pungbek asked the spirit of the father in a woman's body what they should do to make the men get better. The spirit of the father says through a woman's mouth that they should pray for it.
좋은 직장 버리면 안 되죠. 버리지 말고 기도해라.
Pungbek says she shouldn't abandon her good workplace, so she should pray in her spare time. Pungbek asked the spirit of the father if the man and the woman should pray living together or by living separately. The spirit of the father orders to follow the sister by praying together. Surprisingly, the relationship of the two were sister and brother. By the order of the father spirit, the sister, possessed by a spirit, pats her brother, saying he is pathetic.
부정만 하시면 다 들어온다 했어.
많이 하고 예쁘게 착하게 예쁜 마음으로 그렇게 해야 된대.
예.
아이고.
예.
The brother who hadn't moved an inch suddenly starts to talk and sob. Now the possession has been happened to the brother. In other words, the sister is possessed by the spirit of the father, and the brother is possessed by the spirit of the grandmother.
예, 알았어요, 할머니. 예, 예, 예. 할머니 알았습니다, 할머니. 영말 기도 잘하고 할게요, 제가요. 네, 속상하다. 예, 예. 예, 예. 할머니가 진짜 살았어요. 예, 속상해서 그래요. 예, 너무 속상하네. 입은 막 똑똑하고 말이 많고 하는 건 없고. 예.
Pungbek says, there has been another mad grandson in this family. These phenomena are not illness, and this cannot be cured by the modern medical technology. It will only be cured when he prays and lives as a shaman.
아이고 속상해라. 맞아, 할머니. 일주일만 할까요?
When Pungbek asks would they pray for just 1 week, the brother says they should pray every day.
기도하고 또 시간 나면 제이석구람 내가 갔던 데 가고 의성 금수상도 가고 가야 돼. 할머니 나사 주세요. 아이고. 네, 좋아요. 좋답니다. 이제 기분 좋아요. 좋다고 이제. 할머니 소원이 뭐예요? 할머니 얘기해보세요. 제가 들어드릴게. 아이고 좋단다 이제. 여러분 이제 나사 주세요.
The spirit of the grandmother falls down backward, laughing and mourning at the same time.
오실 때 목걸이 있잖아요. 영마한테 왜 왔어요?
When Pungbek asked the grandmother spirit how she came to her grandson, the spirit of the grandmother answers, she came to help her grandson to live a happy life. Pungbek tells the spirit of the grandmother to go to heaven and rest well. But the grandmother just keep on saying, I should. That doesn't mean that she will go to heaven, but she will remain in her grandson's body and go for praying. Pungbek says that she can't decide right at this moment, but after, when they go for praying for 100 days. The spirit of the grandmother starts to wail, confessing all the resentments that haven't been removed during her lifetime. Pungbek says the reason why the spirit of the grandmother wails is because she feels everything's unfair. She wanted to live as a god served by shaman, borrowing her grandson's body. But as Pungbek suggests her to go to heaven and decide everything after praying for 100 days, she is crying sadly. Since the sister and brother both working as a shaman is not a good thing, Pungbek tells them to decide after praying for 100 days. Then the spirit of the grandmother doesn't answer back, staying still, different from her previous behavior.
할머니 그러지 마시고 할머니 연불 받고 공거들여 천상 갔다가 해탈하고 기도 많이 하고 100일 후에 다시 와요. 제가 그때 그때 100일 후에쯤 다시 한번 봐야 되겠다 한 얘기를 했는데 그게 맞아요?
Suddenly, the woman taps her head with flour, complaining for a headache, and also feels nauseated. Pungbek says the reason why she feels nauseated is because her father has slaughtered animals such as snakes or dogs in lifetime. In Korean shamanism, the reason why they feel nauseated during possession is usually because they have ate fish or animal during lifetime. The old shamans have used hallucinogen to maintain the possession. But since in modern days hallucinogen is illegal, they substitute it with incense. Pungbek keeps on using incense to prevent the spirits of grandmother and father from going out of the two people's body.
아버지 이제 다 썼구나. 이제 내려가게 해주세요. 예. 예, 안 아파야 맞게 되지 아프면 안 되잖아요. 할머니, 예, 같이 합시다. 우리 이러지 말고 마주 보세요. 마주 봐. 일로 봐. 같이 보고 해결해야 된다. 자.
Pungbek makes the spirit of the father and the grandmother to face each other.
자, 할머니, 양보 서로 안 할락한다. 신은 용서가 없다.
The spirit of the father in a woman's body and the spirit of the grandmother in the man's body fights for being the shaman. In Korean shamanism, they traditionally avoid more than one shaman coming out from one family. They regard that the spiritual power gets stronger if only one person becomes a shaman in one family. However, since the god that each shaman has to serve are all different, they do not usually back down for each other.
하지 말까요? 할머니 갈라카이 하던 하되 억울하대. 서로 지금 양보를 안 하려카니 말 앞에 양식이라고. 억울해서. 서로 하려고
As Pungbek suggests the woman possessed by the spirit of the father to live as a shaman, and the spirit of the grandmother to go to the heaven, the spirit of the grandmother refuses it and cries.
여기서 주인공하고 할머니가 주인공이야. 이건 도법이야. 할머니 바로 얘기하세요. 그러지 말고. 할머니 바로 얘기하세요. 기도 드려준다 했는데 할머니 자꾸 그러면 안 돼요. 할머니 경우가 발라야 돼요. 돌아가신 분도. 할머니 저랑 약속해요. 100일 기도하는 걸로 하고 매일 기도하고 시간 나면 기도하고 좋은 날 산에 갈 때 내가 데려가고 기도할게요. 됐습니까?
Pungbek tells the grandmother to make a decision after going praying for 100 days and cultivating herself spiritually. Then the grandmother agrees with this and smiles. The spirit of the grandmother wants to work as a shaman with her grandson.
알았습니다. 할머니 잘 들어보세요. 그러면 이 영마에 다 닦아주소 꽃다발 할머니가 아픈 데를 그래갖고 제가 기도 시켜드릴게요. 이제부터 됐지요? 이제 퇴근해서 와서 시간 나면 기도하고.
Pungbek requests the grandmother, since she will let her grandson to live as a shaman after the prayer, she should not immobilize her grandson's hand and foot, making him go to the hospital.
억울하다. 많이 필요 안 돼. 엄마가 무시해버렸어. 이래 됐네. 맞죠? 며느리 무시해가 그렇죠? 할머니 모시고 좀.
The grandmother came to her grandson by the resentment of not becoming a shaman during lifetime because of the ignorance by her family and daughter-in-law.
맞죠? 영마한테요.
Shamans have an ability to find out what spirit is possessing the person. They can even make certain spirit to possess their own body. Pungbek suddenly talks as if she is the grandmother. She has been possessed by the spirit of the grandmother. She says to the grandson that he could meet her through this kind of ritual because she has made him sick, and adds this kind of illness cannot be cured in hospital, but living with her can cure all the illness. As response, the grandson answers, "That's right," in loud voice.
그러지 마라. 이제부터 이제 마음 잡고 살아라. 니도 야, 니 머리 깎고 중대 팔자인데 뭐 여자가 니도 그래 생각해라. 알았지?
얘기할 수밖에 없어.
Pungbek, currently possessed by the spirit of the grandmother, says, "Where would be a woman in your life since your destiny is to live as a monk? How could the things be all right if you don't pray and just think about women? Get a hold of yourself." And everyone laughs.
그래서 니 이쁜 거 잘해주고 해야지. 나이도 어리고 한데. 맞지, 할머니?
우리 엄마도 해야겠다 해야. 우리 엄마는 마음도 천사고.
아들이 또 자기 엄마 잘하고.
Then the spirit of the father in the woman's body starts to talk. He talks about the conflict between him and his mother. Since his mother enjoyed spending money, he disliked his mother and disregarded her. Then the spirit of the grandmother, who came back to the brother's body, starts to cry, as if it reminded her of that time.
지금 보통이라 해야 돼. 엄마가 너무 막 마음 좋고 동네 사람 오느라 가느라 퍼주고 놀고 막 이랬겠네. 아들이 싫어가지고 서로 좀 안 좋은 게 있었죠. 맞죠?
The grandmother closes her mouth as the spirit of her son says they have fought and had a conflict because of her fault during lifetime. The conflict between the mother and son during lifetime reappears in the same way.
그 우선 이거 해결해야 되겠네. 뭐 결정해라 어쩌겠노. 아버지가 안 하면 머리 때려 눕히고 아프게 한다 하지.
믿고 한번 따라봐라.
예, 아버지가 믿고 따라봐라 하네. 예, 알았어. 본인이 약속했어요.
The spirit of the father keeps on making his daughter have a headache and suggests his daughter to follow him with faith and live as a shaman. For that reason, the sister says she would follow his suggestion.
말단 최고다 한다 아버지가 이제 좋아갖고. 아버지요, 그러면은 영만이 어쩔까? 영만이 뭐 사회로 돌려줄까? 기도 안 해도 될까요? 말자만 하면.
아유, 기도해야 돼, 기도.
기도해야 돼요. 그럼 여도 앞으로 독법으로 가겠습니까?
아유, 기도하고 기도해야지. 지도 좋고 나도 좋고.
예, 서로 닦아야 됩니다. 예, 알았습니다. 그럼요. 아버지 먼저 해결해야 돼. 아버지 그러면 알았고요. 말자랑 그렇게 하는 걸 기억났습니다. 이제 머리 안 아프게 하겠습니까? 아, 예. 예, 예.
가자.
가자. 어디로 가요?
그래, 가자.
활동사 갈까요?
가자. 가야지 이제.
어디로 갈까요? 부산 갈까요? 뭐 강원도로 갈까요?
다 가야지 이제.
전 세계 전국으로.
Pungbaek asked the spirit of the father what they should do with his son. Then the spirit of the father says that he should live for praying, which will make everyone happy.
나 기도 잘 됐네요, 뭐. 예. 이만하면 만족합니까?
알았어. 미안해, 보통 아들이야.
예.
내가 보통 이야기.
The conflict caused by misunderstanding for each other blocks the spirit of the grandmother and the spirit of the father facing each other. Pungbaek suggests the spirit of the grandmother to forgive her son and makes them face each other, and says, "Forgive your son" to the spirit of the grandmother. Pungbaek urges the spirit of the grandmother to forgive the spirit of the father and make up with him. But the grandmother just keeps silence and sobs without moving an inch.
그래, 막 틀어져가 있으면 안 된다. 그래, 울기만 할 거예요. 속이 너무 많이 상하네. 하면요. 내가 울려면 오늘 밤새 울어도 한이 안 찬단다. 할머니.
Pungbaek keeps on urging the grandmother to forgive her son, but she closes her mouth and cries. Pungbaek suggests the spirit of the father to ask for forgiveness to his mother and release her anger. So finally, the spirit of the father starts to talk, asking for forgiveness. The spirit of the father keeps on saying sorry. As Pungbaek yells to the spirit of the father that he did whatever he wanted to do, beating up his mother, the spirit of the grandmother makes a faint smile. Pungbaek tells the grandmother that if she doesn't forgive her son and keeps on having the conflict even after death, the descendants might live in adversities, but she still doesn't forgive her son.
제자길로 가면 머리 안 아프게 한다 하니까 아버지 이제 간다 했잖아요.
간다 캔데 뭐 내가 사줘야지. 알았어. 우리 할머니 요래가 있어.
맨날 요렇게 있었어요.
요래서 정말 말도 안 하시고 성공은 흥이하시고 베풀고 기도하시고.
Then the spirit of the father says that his mother have behaved just like this also during lifetime.
할머니 술 한잔 드릴까요?
Pungbaek offers the spirit of the grandmother a cup of alcoholic drink. He tells the grandmother felt happy when drinking during her lifetime, even singing a song.
할머니, 예? 할머니, 그 술 한잔 드려봐 할머니한테 술. 할머니 술 한잔 드릴까요?
막걸리 안 되지 막걸리.
이만하게 불린다. 자요. 손자 한잔 드려. 이빨하고. 바람이 다 드리지 할머니.
할머니 한잔 하고 쭉 마시고.
The daughter-in-law gives a cup of makgeolli to grandmother. Makgeolli is a Korean traditional alcoholic drink. The grandmother smiles and empties her cup, then asks for another.
가득 드려, 가득 드려.
As the spirit of the grandmother gets another cup of makgeolli, she soothes her sorrow by repeating to laugh and cry.
할머니 우시는 거 소리 안 나고.
The grandmother, who had lots of resentments, wails in loud voice, unclear if she is laughing or crying.
할머니 속상한 게 있어도 잘 이해하지 그렇게 하시면 안 돼요. 후손이 안 되고요. 할머니도 내가 개잖아 약간. 개잖아요.
내가
예. 하고 싶은 거 다 해보세요 오늘.
The grandmother cries bitterly, shouting out, "Today I am feeling sick. Oh, my son, my son."
우리 아들아
살았으니까 서로 좀 이런 게 있어가 그렇게 한다. 안 보고 막 이랬나 봐. 보고 싶다고. 바꾸세요.
Pungbek tells the grandmother to remove all the resentment that had been created during lifetime here.
다 풀어야 된다 이거. 다 풀어. 잘못다 해야 되겠다. 아들 나는 잘못했어.
잘못했어요. 아이고 엄마 잘못했다. 내가 아이고 엄마 마음 알고도.
다 실리 있다가 양심.
The spirit of the father possessed in sister's body asked for forgiveness to the spirit of his mother possessed in the brother's body. He says sorry for messing his mother and ignoring her during lifetime, just like the grandfather did when he was young.
자식이 신랑이 왜 이러냐 하면서 맞지요? 내 맘 알아주면 한 개도 없고 새끼 저놈 새끼도 저지르러 댕기고 삼돌이하고 똑같다 삼돌이하고. 예 아들도 용서하고 손 잡으세요 아들아 손잡 하이 합시다 우리.
Pungbek holds the hand of the brother, being possessed by the spirit of the grandmother, and asks her to forgive her son. Finally, the spirit of the father asks for forgiveness to his mom since he have ignored and disliked her. Then the grandmother again wails, calling out, "My son!" It's the tear of regret, feeling bad for not being able to resolve the conflict during lifetime.
한이 너무 많다 내가.
As if even the spirit have emotions, the brother possessed by the spirit of the grandmother holds the sister's hand, who is possessed by the spirit of the father, and wails. The spirit of the father also asks for forgiveness to his mom, telling every single thing that he had done wrong. This is the moment when the conflict is all resolved. Everyone being happy by resolving all the misunderstanding, conflict, and antagonism toward each other is called resentment dissolution. And this is the virtue and the social functioning of good.
엄마 용서해야지요. 이미 하가 죽어가지고 유명히 바뀌었건 누구에게서 용서하세요.
As the two spirits forgive each other, Pungbek prays for them to release all of their resentments by reciting Haewongyong. Haewongyong is the Buddhist scripture to console the revengeful spirit. Pungbek tells the spirit of the grandmother to scold her son since he did wrong during lifetime. Then the spirit of the grandmother yells to her son and laughs out loud.
이제 풀린데 서로 할머니 이제 마음 좀 풀었습니까? 아이고 예 다행입니다. 할머니 이제 아들하고 악수.
Since the mother and the son couldn't resolve the conflict even after death, they give sufferings to their daughter and grandson. But by the help of Pungbek, they could release the conflict and join together to pray for descendants' happiness. After doing the kut, there is the last thing to do. It's to send back the ghosts that came in together during the kut. For the spirit of the grandmother and the spirit of the father, they prepare food and console them. However, the other ghosts are treated with foods in 뒷전상, which is a small table of foods placed outside the main place of the kut. And to prevent the sister and brother to be possessed by other ghosts, Pungbek purified the place with fire and make them spit 3 times. To get rid of the bad spirit, they use fire, salt, red clay, red beans, and end with spitting 3 times. This is the traditional way of purifying in Korean shamanism. By this, the dramatic 허튼 good of Pungbek have came to an end. The conflict between the mother and son created during lifetime have not been dissolved and left as a resentment affecting their descendants. Not being able to remove the conflict and antagonism during lifetime have become a resentment, and they have asked their descendants to remove it. But it returned as an unknown illness to the descendants, so they have been living a hard life until now. Today, Through Pungbek's Hotun-gut, the spirit have resolved the resentment that was not removed during their lifetime and wished for descendants' health and happiness.